Hello coolers, and welcome back to yet another video on the channel today, guys, where a lot of Barca news would be coming your way, because we shall be discussing Hansi Flick and the impact he has had in his early days at Barca, as we also get to see and know more of the kind of manager that the German would be in his time at Barcelona. He has also spoken, and we shall be looking at the highlights from the interview he granted to Barça One. We shall also be looking at some transfer news, as there is an update on Mikel Merino, as well as a discussion on how Barca should spend their money this summer. But first of all, I have to begin by talking about Barça Atletic manager Rafael Marquez. Yesterday, it was reported in the media that Rafa Marquez was on the verge of accepting an offer from the Mexican FA to take over as the assistant to national team manager Javier Aguirre. Marquez, who is a Mexican himself, was supposed to stay at Barca after leading Barça Atletic to a second successive playoff final, although they ultimately fell short once again. But it was still an impressive performance from the Mexican coach, because when you consider the fact that most of his star players were always called up by the first team in this period whereby Barca have been struggling to make star signings, the B team has usually been a source of hope, light and talent for the first team. And Marquez, despite all the challenges that he had to face, he was able to lead Barça Atletic to consecutive playoff finals, although they ultimately fell short. But nonetheless, it was still an impressive performance, and a lot of people within the club rate Marquez very highly. In fact, it was said that he was one of the major candidates to replace Xavi after he was replaced as Barca manager, although that responsibility ultimately fell to Hansi Flick. But Laporta and Deco clearly held Marquez in high regard. But now it seems that Marquez would not be continuing at Barça Atletic, as he is poised to join Mexico as, first of all, an assistant to Javier Aguirre, and then he's expected to take over as the senior head coach of the Mexican national team after the 2026 World Cup. It is said to be a 6-year deal on the table for Marquez, which means that the first 2 years would be as a deputy to Aguirre, and then the next 4 will see him be the main man in charge of the Mexican national team. But now I have to move on to the main man in charge of Barca right now, in the form of Hansi Flick. Hansi Flick has relatively kept a low profile since his arrival at the club, as opposed to someone like Xavi, who, regardless of the fact that he also wanted to maintain a low profile at the club, but it was basically impossible for him to do that, because Xavi was a club legend, both as a player and as a man. Xavi is Barca through and through, so it was difficult for him to maintain a low profile. But Hansi Flick has been doing just that since it was confirmed that he is the new man in charge of Barca. And up until this point, Hansi Flick has still not held an official press conference since signing as the Barca manager. But he spoke to Barça One on Friday. Barça One is the official media channel of Barcelona, and Hansi Flick spoke to the media on Friday, as apparently the club opened the doors for the media to be present in Friday's training. However, it was not just the media that were present in Friday's session, as President Joan Laporta was also present in the session. And it is said that Flick did something strange when the media were allowed into the club, because obviously from time to time the media are always allowed into the training ground. But then again, there was something strange that Hansi Flick did, something that had never previously been done before, as he went ahead and greeted each and every journalist that was present at Friday's training section. This was something that was never done before, as previously they would have been allowed to come and cover the training from time to time, but that close contact with the manager was something that had never been done before. And this is really a commendable move from Hansi Flick, because make no mistake about it, handling the media properly, handling the media effectively is a major part of the Barca job, and this is a positive in my opinion. And speaking to Barça One on Friday, Flick had this to say. He said, "I felt the passion from the very first day, from everyone, the fans, the president, everyone here who works for Barca. They all have this passion and a devotion to give their best to this club, and this is a big thing for us, because we want to be a part of this club." Flick was obviously talking about he and his coaching staff. He went on to add that we want to work with this passion and devotion, because we will give everything that we have to bring this club to the next level. So clearly you can see that Flick is pumped to be here. He and his coaching staff, they are really impressed with the feeling around the club. And you can clearly see there that it is a special moment for Hansi Flick, as he has finally had the chance to manage Barcelona. He also had this to say when speaking to Barça One. He said, "When I decided to become a coach, I followed Barça because they played fantastic football and the way they develop players, and this is why we are so happy to be here." But he didn't stop there. He also reserved some words of praise for the youngsters in the team. Mind you, most of the first team players, most of the senior players are currently unavailable because they had competed in one major international tournament or the other during the summer. And then there are those of them like Pau Kubasi and Fermin Lopez, who are also heading out to the Olympic Games in Paris this summer. So clearly, Flick has been working with a lot of youngsters in these early days and weeks of preseason, and he had some praise for the youngsters. He said, "I want to say thank you to La Masia, because what I am seeing in the first training sections is unbelievable. Normally, when international players are still on holidays and you bring in many youth players, the quality drops a little bit. Here, that's not just the case." Flick is clearly impressed with what he has been seeing from the youngsters, and we have seen a lot of them being promoted in recent years. So clearly, there might also be a chance that we are going to see more youngsters who make that jump into the first team. And this is clearly in line with the words of Joan Laporta when he spoke to Barça One after the appointment of Hansi Flick was confirmed. He said, "Flick is clear on the fact that he always has to look to a Masia. He knows he has some gems here like Lamine Yamal, Hector Fort, Kubasi, Balde, Gavi, and he is excited about working with the young players. He is very motivated about getting the best out of this team." And the early signs are clearly there, because what we have been hearing and from the clips we have been watching of the training sections and what has been happening in preseason so far is that the signs are very good, because Hansi Flick has clearly offered some changes in the way of doing things at the club. It is said that alongside working a lot with the ball in training sections, Hansi Flick has been drumming it in the ears of his players that they have to play as a family, they have to play as a team, they have to fight for one another. That means that when there is adversity in the difficult moments, they must have each other's back, they must fight to the death, and this is a positive mentality to instill in the club. It is also said that Hansi Flick has been putting in a lot of work when it comes to on the ball training, because the players have been training a lot with the ball, because we know Barca are a team that likes to have the ball, they like to play with the ball as opposed to playing without the ball. But then the major impact that Hansi Flick has clearly had in his first few weeks in Barca is on the part of the physical preparation. Word has it that the training methods that Hansi Flick has been implementing when it comes to the physical side of things is something that has never been seen at the club before. It is revolutionary, and the players are also beginning to see the results of that physical preparation, because Hansi Flick clearly believes that for you to effectively compete against the best teams and for the biggest titles, you have to be physically fit for not just about 60 minutes in the game, but you have to be physically fit for the physical demands that the modern day game requires from the beginning to the end of games. When you want to compete against the big sides in Europe, you have to be up for the fight. You don't have to just prepare for the playing side of things, you also have to prepare physically and mentally, and this is clearly something that Hansi Flick seems to be bringing to Barca, because what we heard is that as opposed to Xavi's approach, whereby players started training on a more relaxed note, trying to bond with one another and building that family atmosphere before training starts, and even sometimes just before the close of training, where a lot of fun games and activities are also done, which also gives off that positive vibe and also makes the environment a place that is nice to be around. But the truth is, Barca does not need to be a place that is nice and cool to be around right now. What Barca needs is results. Barca needs players that are locked in and are plugged in and are committed from the word go and are willing to put in the work to restore Barca back to its former glories. And clearly Hansi Flick is trying to achieve just that. It is said that from the word go in Barca training these days, it is work, work and work. The players have to be totally locked in for that period where they shall be on the training ground, because a lot is expected from the players and the team. And Hansi Flick, definitely from what he has said in his interview with Barça One, it is clear that he would also be betting on a lot of the club's youngsters for next season. But while relying on La Masia and the youth team is all good and fine, and also keeps in line with the club's long-term philosophy of growing players from within, make absolutely no mistake about it that Barca would need new signings this summer. If we are to be able to compete effectively for titles, we need to make some signings this summer. And when you look at the fact that Real Madrid have already boosted an amazing and world-class team with the additions of Kylian Mbappe and Endrick Felipe, then it makes it all the more frightening, not to talk of Atletico de Madrid, who have also been strengthening their team this summer. They are said to be on the verge of signing Spain's Euro 2024 winning defender Robin Lenormand, who is a player of Real Sociedad. But the latest we have heard on that is that Atletico are planning to make it a double raid on Real Sociedad, because apparently they are looking to include his Real Sociedad and Spain teammate Mikel Merino, who has been very much linked with a move to Barca in that deal. But then we have also heard that at this moment in time, it seems that Merino would be looking to wait for Barca and see if Barca's interest is actually concrete and if an offer is actually placed on the table for his services. Barca would be his priority. But at this point, it seems that Barca has other more pressing needs and other priorities, because alongside the potential signing of Nico Williams from Athletic Bilbao, Barca are seriously looking to also sign his Spanish teammate Dani Olmo from RB Leipzig. Olmo had a 60 million euros release clause in his Leipzig contract, but that release clause has now expired, which means that any potential move for Olmo this summer is likely to become more expensive due to the fact that Leipzig can demand whatever fee they want for this player. And we also heard rumors that they would even be looking for a club record sale that eclipses Josko Guardiola's 90 million euros move to Man City last summer. But then there is some encouraging news on that front, because we have also heard that Leipzig may have a Barca agreement with Dani Olmo, which means that they may be willing to concede more ground in the evaluation of the player should he insist on a summer move back to Barcelona. And this is because apparently Leipzig feel indebted to Dani Olmo and they would not stand in his way if a fair offer comes from Barca for his services. It is said that Barca at this moment are still looking at a 60 million euros deal to facilitate Dani Olmo's transfer back to the club. But the caveat is that Barca would not be paying these 60 million euros all at once. It is not going to be a full upfront payment of 60 million euros, as opposed to what is expected that they would pay 58 million euros straight to activate the release clause of Nico Williams from his Athletic Bilbao contract. But it is said that Barca are looking to offer Leipzig a fixed fee that will now be made up by variables, which will now make the total sum of the transfer come up to the full 60 million euros. But what this allows Barca to do is that it allows them to spread the cost of the transfer over a number of years, and now reduces the pressure of having to pay that money all at once. Because we know that last week Deco met with Dani Olmo's agents as well, and apparently their discussions centered around reaching personal terms for the player. It is said that Barca have offered Dani Olmo a 6-year deal to sign for the club. And while this looks like a very long-term deal, what this allows Barca to do is to spread the cost of his wages over those 6 years as well. That means that from the first 2 years of the 6-year deal, Olmo might need to make some financial sacrifice, in the sense that he will earn a lower salary in those first 2 years, and then over the course of the next 4 years he will also be compensated handsomely by the club. This is obviously with the belief that Barca are expecting to return to a more healthy financial position in the next few years to come, because it sounds very similar to the terms that have been offered to another of Barca's top targets for this summer's transfer window in the form of Nico Williams. So clearly at this point, it looks like Barca are desperately and seriously interested in signing the two Spanish internationals this summer. But once again, I have to add that for these operations to happen, it is very unlikely that a major sale would not be needed. because I struggle to see where Barca would come up with these large sums of money from. If you are paying 58 million euros for Nico Williams, and even if Leipzig concede to a deal that allows Barca to pay for the full 60 million euros valuation of Dani Olmo in installments, that is still going to be a lot of money, and there is absolutely no way that Barca would not make a big sale this summer in order to make that happen. And Gerard Romero had these words to say concerning this particular situation at the moment. He said, on Thursday, 2 different agents have given me the name of a Barca player who could be put on the market in the event of Dani Olmo's arrival, and I didn't expect this name. So Romero apparently has some inside information that a surprise player would be leaving Barca this summer in the event that Dani Olmo arrives at the club. Romero also added that that player is not going to be Ilkay Gundogan. And now I begin to wonder who could be that player that Barca would be looking to sell this summer in order to raise the funds necessary to facilitate the transfers of the players who are looking like our main targets at this point, Nico Williams and Dani Olmo. Could it be Jules Koundé? Could it be Andreas Christensen? I personally do not see any of those 2 leaving this summer. But could it be Ronald Araujo? I really do not see it happening as well, because as we discussed in a previous video, Ronald Araujo is going to be out for the next 4 months, and it is highly unlikely that any of his suitors would be willing to pay big money for him while he's not even going to be fit for the early stages of the season. Which now brings me on to another player in the form of Frenkie de Jong. Could it be Frenkie de Jong? Because obviously he has been linked a lot with a departure from Barca in recent years. A move has clearly not materialized, and from all he has been saying in the media, he doesn't want to leave the club as well. But then again, I have to add that during the club's kit launch on Thursday, Frenkie de Jong was nowhere to be found. Even in the promotional video that was posted, we didn't see Frenkie de Jong in any of those videos. There were no pictures of him wearing the new jersey as well. And why this does not guarantee that Frenkie de Jong is clearly on his way out of the club. I also have to point out that De Jong is not just a big name at Barca, but he's also a big name at Nike, the kit manufacturers of Barcelona. So one would definitely expect that Nike making a jersey for a big club like Barca, one of their ambassadors should certainly play a leading role. But clearly, that has not been the case. But once again, I have to reiterate that this does not guarantee that he is the player that will be on his way out of the club. Like Araujo, he's also dealing with injury problems of his own. He missed the end of last season after he sustained an injury playing in the Clásico, and he has returned to preseason this summer with that swollen ankle that we saw when the players arrived and reported for preseason training. And he also missed Euro 2024 with his national team, the Netherlands. And his manager, Ronald Koeman, has been speaking a lot lately. He had some words to say previously as well, even during Euro 2024. And once again, while speaking at a golf event organized in the city of Barcelona over the weekend, Ronald Koeman once again took the opportunity to attack Barca, as he always does these days. He said, "I speak with him often. We know each other well, and he is very worried about his injury. It's a significant injury, and we have to wait and see how it goes. I wish him luck and a speedy recovery, but he is still not ready to play." He now added that Frenkie played big games when he wasn't ready to play. He didn't have match reading or training sessions to play the games against PSG. On one hand, I understand it because it was an important moment of the season for Barca, but in the end, it's not been good for Frenkie. Koeman once again taking the opportunity to express his displeasure at Barca and also at Xavi as well, who was his replacement at the club, for fielding De Jong in those games against PSG and also against Real Madrid, when he felt that Frenkie was clearly in no condition to play those games. But then again, it is what it is. Right now, the blame game will do nobody no favors. It is just hoping that Frenkie de Jong completes a full recovery and is back on the pitch as soon as possible. But the truth of the matter remains that we still do not know that player who would be sacrificed for Barca to be able to complete deals for Nico Williams and Dani Olmo this summer. Clearly, Nico Williams is a priority at this point because obviously Barca needs a left winger, and Laporta even said as much when he was speaking about the plans for next season, that a left winger is a priority. And I definitely agree with that, because since Neymar left the club in 2017, Barca has not had a proper left winger in that position. And while Dani Olmo is a super player who would be a great addition to any team that he joins from Leipzig this summer, it makes me to feel somewhat that Barca may just be deviating from their initial transfer strategy at this point, because let's not forget that earlier in the summer when Laporta was speaking, he mentioned that we will study what else is needed with Flick. Maybe we need to strengthen in defensive midfield. Christensen has helped us there, but we have to add another player. But at this moment, it seems like the focus has shifted from a defensive midfielder to an attacking midfielder like Dani Olmo. And I have to add that with the figures we are hearing of around 60 million euros to complete a deal for Dani Olmo, could Barca have been better placed using that money on a defensive pivot, like for instance someone like Martin Zubimendi, who is another player that was heavily linked with Barca in the past during the Xavi era, and he has a 60 million euros release clause in his Real Sociedad contract as well. Make no mistake about it that Martin Zubimendi is a top player, and he also just won Euro 2024 with the Spanish national team. And in that final against England, when Rodri picked up an injury and looked as if he was going to be subbed off, there were fears that all hell had broken loose. But up stepped Zubimendi into the pitch and he controlled things in the middle of the park for Spain. It was even very difficult to notice that Rodri was not playing, and definitely this speaks volumes of the quality that a top player like Martin Zubimendi possesses. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below, guys. Do you believe that Barca would be able to pull off a deal for both Nico Williams and Dani Olmo this summer? And if so, would you prefer to sign Nico Williams and Dani Olmo, or would you rather prefer that Barca uses that money on a top pivot like Martin Zubimendi or his Real Sociedad teammate Mikel Merino, who is apparently interested in joining Barca as well? Let me know your thoughts, guys. What do you make of Hansi Flick's words in his first media engagement as the Barca coach? And also, I would like to hear your opinions on the player who might be leaving Barca this summer. But before I sign out, I want to use this opportunity to say a very big thank you to everyone who has been with me on this journey so far. The channel has been witnessing steady growth in the last few days and weeks, and I would be an ingrate if I do not come here to express my heartfelt appreciations for the support we have been getting so far. Thank you very much for your support. It means a lot to me. And if you enjoyed this video, please do hit the like button, turn on your notification bell so that whenever I drop next on the channel, you shall be notified. And most importantly, if you are not yet subscribed to the channel, please do us the favor of hitting that subscribe button. But until next time, as always, Visca El Barça, and I'll see you on the next one. Adios.